The story of Rolex and the journey of Hans Wilsdorf. The year was 1893. A 12-year-old boy from Germany lost his parents. He inherited a small amount of money, but while traveling, it was stolen. Despite losing everything, he held on to one thing: his unstoppable passion for watches. This passion helped him build the world's greatest watch company. This is the story of Rolex. The early struggles of Hans Wilsdorf. After his parents' passing, young Hans Wilsdorf became an orphan. His future seemed uncertain. His relatives sold his parents' business and sent him to a boarding school. There, he befriended a Swiss boy who introduced him to Switzerland's renowned watchmaking industry. Fascinated, Hans realized that his true calling lay in this field. In 1900, at the age of 19, he left Germany and moved to Switzerland, where he found a job at a watchmaking company called Horten. His role involved checking the accuracy of hundreds of watches daily, fueling his passion for creating precision timepieces. A setback and a new beginning. In 1903, Hans decided to settle in London. But during his journey, tragedy struck. His inheritance of 3,300 German gold marks was stolen. It was a huge setback, but he had no choice but to move forward. In London, he took a job in another watch company's sales and marketing department. Over the next 2 years, he learned the intricacies of watch manufacturing, sales, and most importantly, consumer preferences. At the time, most watchmakers focused on fancy and decorative designs, but Hans realized that customers valued simplicity, durability, and elegance. At just 24 years old, he decided to start his own watch company. The birth of Rolex. However, there was a major obstacle: Hans lacked the capital to start his business. To solve this, he partnered with his brother-in-law, who provided the necessary funds. Together, they established Wilsdorf Davis in 1905. Understanding that travelers needed reliable watches to catch trains and buses on time, they introduced a smaller, more portable pocket watch. They named it the Portfolio Pocket Watch. With its high-quality leather pouch and premium design, it became an instant hit. Despite starting with pocket watches, Hans believed wristwatches would eventually replace them. However, wristwatches were not widely accepted at the time, as they were seen as accessories only for women. Changing perceptions. In 1906, Hans observed that both men and women in Britain liked wearing bracelets. He saw an opportunity and launched gold and silver wristwatches, calling them bracelet watches instead of wristwatches. This marketing strategy made his watches popular across Britain. Hans also wanted his watches to have a unique, easily recognizable name. After testing over 100 names, he finally settled on Rolex in 1908 and trademarked it. Overcoming accuracy challenges. While Rolex watches gained popularity, they still faced accuracy issues. Until 1910, Hans imported watch movements from Switzerland. But he wanted more precision. Determined to improve accuracy, he studied horology and collaborated with expert watchmakers. Eventually, he developed the 15-line caliber 200 movement and sent it to Switzerland's official chronometer testing institute. After rigorous testing, it became the first wristwatch movement to receive a chronometer certificate, significantly enhancing Rolex's reputation. By 1914, Rolex expanded across Europe, with a team of 60 exceptional employees. But then, World War I disrupted everything. Surviving World War I. the British government imposed a 33% export duty on watches to fund the war, making Rolex significantly more expensive than its competitors. Sales plummeted, and Hans had no choice but to relocate the company to Switzerland. There, he officially renamed the business Rolex Watch Company Limited and restarted operations. During the war, he noticed a crucial trend as soldiers needed wristwatches, as pocket watches were impractical on the battlefield. In response, Rolex launched the trench watch, designed specifically for soldiers. It featured unbreakable glass, a durable body, and a luminescent radium-coated hand for visibility in low light. Soldiers returning home were seen as heroes, and when people saw them wearing wristwatches became widely accepted. Hans had correctly predicted that wristwatches would replace pocket watches. The birth of the Rolex Oyster. Despite the success, wristwatches had a major issue if they weren't resistant to dust and water, which affected their accuracy. Hans designed a revolutionary screw-down case that sealed the watch tightly, protecting it from heat, dust, and water. He also added rubber rings to eliminate gaps, making the watch as tightly sealed as an oyster shell. Thus, in 1926, the world's first waterproof watch, the Rolex Oyster, was born. To market the Oyster's waterproof ability, Hans partnered with Mercedes Gleitz, the first woman to attempt to swim across the English Channel. She wore the watch during her swim. Although she didn't complete the swim, the Rolex Oyster remained perfectly functional. This created a sensation, and Hans displayed the Oyster in fish tanks at retail stores, proving its waterproof nature. Introducing the automatic watch. At the time, watches required manual winding every 2 days. If not wound properly, water could seep in. Hans worked tirelessly to solve this issue. Eventually, he invented the perpetual rotor, a semicircular mechanism that rotated with wrist movements to automatically wind the watch. In 1931, Rolex introduced the Oyster Perpetual, the world's first self-winding watch. This innovation made Rolex a legend in the watchmaking industry. World War II and Rolex's rise. Then came World War II, which disrupted global supply chains and hurt sales. Hans struggled, but he ensured Rolex survived. In 1944, tragedy struck. He lost his wife. Yet, despite personal and professional challenges, he pushed forward. To celebrate Rolex's 40th anniversary in 1945, Hans introduced Rolex Just, the world's first automatic watch with a date display. Initially, the date was too small to read, but inspiration struck when Hans noticed how a water droplet magnified the display. He added a 2.5x magnifying lens, giving birth to the Cyclops lens, now a hallmark of Rolex watches. Rolex's iconic innovations. Over the years, Rolex continued to revolutionize watchmaking. 1953, Rolex Explorer rebuilt for mountaineers, designed to withstand extreme conditions. 1955, Rolex GMT Master Ray featured a rotating bezel, perfect for pilots tracking multiple time zones. 1960, Rolex Deep Sea Special A survived at a depth of 11,000 meters, proving its durability in extreme underwater conditions. The legacy of Hans Wilsdorf. Hans Wilsdorf achieved what no other watchmaker could. His watches reached the highest peaks and the deepest oceans. In 1960, at the age of 79, Hans Wilsdorf passed away. But his legacy lived on through Rolex, one of the most prestigious watch brands in history. This was the story of Rolex. Further refinements.